Good day, Internet. This is DTNS Live for Wednesday, May 7th, 2025. From Studio Animal House, I'm Sarah Lane.
From Studio 7 in Los Angeles, I'm Tom Merritt.
From the Frog Pants Studios in Salt Lake City, I'm Scott Johnson.
And from somewhere else, I am the show's producer, Roger Chang.
Daily Tech News Show Live made possible by you. Big thanks to all of you, including Matt Zaglin, Jeff Wilkes, Paley Glendale, and we got new patrons. Everybody welcome Bob.
Yay.
George.
Yay.
Anatoly.
Whee.
Aaron.
Woo.
Jason.
Hey.
And me?
You? Oh, no,
You.
me is
me.
his name.
Not me, but me.
You know what? Whatever your name is, boy, are we
maybe
glad
it's
to
May.
have you. Welcome me, Jason, Aaron, Anatoly, George, and Bob.
Ooh, nice.
The
new
royal
patrons.
me.
Feeling
That's
good.
fantastic.
The royal me. Queen me.
Welcome, everybody, whoever you are, to DTNS Live. This is the show where we discuss the tech news to help us all understand it a little bit better. Scott Johnson, how the heck are you doing?
Doing good. Back from TMS Vegas. Got to see Tom there, hang out with him. Somehow everybody got sick except me, so I feel like a Final Destination victim. Eventually it's going to catch up and get me somehow. I don't know how. But it was a great time, con crud aside. And really love seeing Tom there. Doing that live show was fun. Just had a great time. So feels good to be back, though. Excited to,
Yeah, thanks for putting it on, man. It's super fun.
Super blast. It was really, really good. And
What was the big news you announced?
the big news is that next year we're doing a comeback to something familiar for some. We're going to do a Nerdtacular event, 2026. If you don't know what that is, it used to be this big network-wide thing we would do for like a decade. I did these, and pandemic came along and said, no, you're not. And so we didn't for a while. Then we were doing these little Vegas excursions, but we're just going to take kind of that idea and blow it up big again, bring people here to Salt Lake City, have a blast.
Aw, how about that?
Yeah, it'll be great. I'll get, I'll have dates soon, but for those interested, pay attention.
Yeah.
I'll bet
Tom
Tom
will
will
go
Of
see
your
a
guest
mammoth
rooms,
game?
Scott, which is the best one? Because that's
what?
the one that I want.
The best which? Sorry, I heard mammoth and I lost my.
No,
train
like
of thought.
in your personal house of your guest rooms.
Yes.
Where am I sleeping?
Oh yeah. So Sarah, we're going to put you in what we call the craft room. Tom will be in food storage, and
Wait a minute. Does that mean you're going to eat me?
No,
Roger.
it means you get to eat, Tom. That's the best one.
Roger
Okay.
is
I have
the
to
water
just sew
heater
all
room.
night.
As long as
Sure.
I'm not the food
Wait,
being stored.
wait. Why do I get the water heater? Can I get
Because it's
the
warm in there and
Oh,
moist.
yeah, toasty.
Yeah.
warm and moist? It sounds like
Oh,
Florida.
Roger always gets the best one.
You guys
All
can
right.
fight it out when you get here. It'll all be
We'll
fun.
call it Florida room.
we've got what, more or less a year. We'll
Yeah.
fight it out. Well, we are all here right this second to talk about tech news. So let's start with the quick hits.
Apple's Eddie Q said in court testimony for Google's antitrust remedy phase that Apple plans to bring search providers like Perplexity and Anthropic to Safari. Q also noted Safari's search usage declined for the first time in April, in part because users are turning to these kinds of AI tools. Apple currently brings in around $20 billion a year from its search deal with Google.
Amazon introduced a warehouse robot called Vulcan that can feel touch using a mix of AI and force sensors to handle what it says is around 75% of items. It's designed to pick and stow goods delicately, even in tight spaces. Vulcan also learns from experience. So it's already operating in Washington state and in several areas of Germany, with plans to roll out more widely across the US and Europe.
Wait, they called something that can feel Vulcan?
They did.
What were they doing?
Yes, they did.
I don't think they get it.
Hedging their bets.
They did not understand the assignment. Amazon Web Services, however, plans to invest more than $4 billion to build a new region of cloud services in Chile, set to launch by the end of 2026. Data centers will use air cooling and are aimed at meeting rising demand across Latin America, not just in Chile. AWS says the initiative will support Chile's digital economy through local job creation and tech training programs.
Spotify is testing a new snooze feature that lets you, if you're a premium user, temporarily remove a song from recommendations for 30 days. Maybe you just love a certain song, but you're like, you know what? It's become an earworm. It's too much. let's pause. The update also improves playlist management on mobile, redesigns the queue with new options like sleep timers, smart shuffles, and expands the hide buttons functionality across devices. Users in select countries can now turn liked songs into playlists, and a new desktop feature lets users preview tracks similar to how they can do it on mobile.
Disney announced it plans to open a new theme park in Abu Dhabi, located on Yas Island. The park will be owned by an Abu Dhabi-based company called Miral and will license the Disney IP. That's a different arrangement from the other 6 Disney parks, which are owned and operated by Disney. Disney described it as the most tech-centric of the parks, but did not give any details of what that would mean.
When I read the story this morning, I was like, okay, what are the other 6 parks? You got Disneyland, Disney World. I know you have Disney Paris, Disney Hong Kong?
Tokyo.
Tokyo.
And Disney
Tokyo.
Yeah.
Ah, got it.
I thought the Tokyo one was also like this, a license deal, but maybe I have that wrong. I thought that was similar.
I mean,
Yeah, according to the company, this is the first one where they're like, you are simply licensing Disney stuff, but it's all you.
Interesting.
Otherwise.
Yeah. Let's go to Dubai, you guys. Load up.
Abu
Showing up in
Dhabi, Scott.
Dhabi. Got that
Listen,
base.
along with the autonomous cars, it's going to be a wonderland.
Hell yeah.
Mitsubishi is in talks with Foxconn's EV arm Foxtron to source new electric vehicles for Australia and New Zealand, with a launch set for late 2026. The company plans to expand its EV lineup through its alliance with Nissan and Renault, selling a refurbished Nissan Leaf in North America in 2026 and a Mitsubishi-made plug-in hybrid under the Nissan brand next year, and Renault-made EVs in Europe. 2 new features are coming to Matter, says the Connectivity Standards Alliance. You might say, what is that? That's the one that runs the standard developed by Apple, Amazon, Google, Samsung, and others to make smart home devices smarter and work together better. Matter's new 1.4.1 update adds tap-to-pair setup using NFC and multi-device QR codes, both designed to simplify smart home device onboarding. Also introducing a new enhanced setup flow that lets users accept manufacturer terms directly in controller apps like Google Home or Apple Home, if that happens to be what you're already using in your home. These updates don't include support for new device types like cameras or speakers. Those won't arrive until late 2025 at the earliest, but that's the idea. We're starting with smart home stuff, and we're going into cameras and speakers later this year. As somebody who recently, I'm now using a new router that was actually gifted to me by a friend. So thank you, friend. Which is just a way better setup for my apartment. But, my everything had to change. All my smart home stuff had to be, put back together from scratch. Everything that I had saved in Amazon's Assistant app, all of that was just wiped out. Now, this is not the end of the world, but it is time consuming for sure, because you got to go one at a time. I have, probably 12 smart bulbs in my house, and they all have their own times. Like my bedroom smart bulb comes on at a different time than the one next to where I read in the living room, for example. Blah blah blah. A lot of that ends up being a QR code. Or if you don't have the box anymore, which many people don't, then it's like you have to like unplug the bulb, and you can't read what the number is, so you have to take a photo of it, and then you have to make the photo bigger, and so you see what the number is, and then anyway, the whole thing is a nightmare. Anything that can make this better is a good situation for me.
Yeah, I've had a recent thing where ISPs changed, and it was a similar deal where I had to go. Actually, I had to kind of remember everything, and I didn't really have a good record of what had been set up and when, older stuff, newer stuff. And it turns out even just changing an ISP can be a problem for some of these things, because they're all like, we don't see the thing that you set us up on. That means you have to set us up again.
Yeah, like IP address changes, everything changes.
Yeah. because exactly, the Wi-Fi changed, therefore I had to do this. It was a huge pain. So I'm with you. Like bring some of that stuff together. Give me these kind of groupings. Let them be smart enough to know that the ISP shouldn't be the breaking point if something changes. I should be able to go, oh, you've changed ISPs. Tell us about the new one, and be done. That'd be wonderful.
And I think this really helps with access for people who, like my parents, are not very technologically literate, if at all, but they understand, like, hey, you just put the phone close to it and it should clue in.
Yeah,
and
tap to pair is pretty simple for folks to wrap their head around, right?
Yeah, one of the things that has been the biggest, I think, barrier for a lot of these smart home technologies is you have to be sort of tech fluent in order to set this stuff up, or at least get it to where it's working the way the box says it's supposed to work. And for a lot of people, it's just like too much. And so they either half set it up, or they just like, well, you're just using it like a normal light bulb. Why don't you why'd you set up? And
I have to say, Amazon, I use the Echo as managing most of my smart home stuff, and it does a good job of finding the newer things that I have. It's the older stuff, especially the LifeX bulbs I have, which are Wi-Fi based. And so,
you have to be on 2.5 gigahertz where you can't change anything with LifeX.
Because the ones I have are from like 2015, I think.
Yeah, early
but
stuff.
if you get newer stuff, it is a lot easier to set stuff up than it used to be. And this makes it even easier. I think this is a great addition. The Matter standard updates twice a year, once in the spring, once in the fall. This is the spring update, which usually comes in May. They usually don't add the new device types until the fall, so we'll see those cameras and speakers and stuff coming in the fall. It's not coming fast enough for any of us, right? We all want it to be done and adopted by everyone.
I mean, we've been talking about Matter for several years now, and there's not a whole lot of movement. I mean, that I could at least say to somebody else who's like, do I want a smart home? It's like, meh. Sometimes I'm like, I don't think this is for you. Yeah. You really gotta be hanging out in apps for a while to figure it out. Case in point, in November, my mom bought a smart bulb. It was a Philips Hue, and put it in her dining room lamp, and it took me hours to figure out how to get Amazon's Assistant so she could talk to her Sonos speaker to then make the bulb work. We figured it out, but it was like she wasn't going to do this.
Yeah, there's clearly a reason that Matter became something that all of these major companies making the big branded smart home devices, they came together and said a standard is needed. And whenever that happens, it feels slow to me. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. Standards are standards for a reason. They stick around for a really long time. Bluetooth I felt like had pretty rapid updates in its earliest days in terms of its, evolution. But I don't know. It kind of makes sense to me that they would take their time. They're all clearly invested. I have really high hopes for one day this just being that simple. Sit down with a single app.
Yeah. Do you remember Bluetooth in 1999?
Oh, yeah.
The way people talk about Matter now is exactly the way everybody talked about Bluetooth. It's like, this is taking forever. Nobody's adopting it. You have to be technologically savvy to understand Bluetooth and make any use of it. Yeah. It's only good for those little phone things that go with phones. It's not good for anything else. Yeah. And eventually, it got good. And eventually, then the complaints were like, yeah, Bluetooth's fine, but it's got range issues and sound issues. And then now it's like, oh, we don't even really have the range issues. And Bluetooth sound is actually getting on par with wired. I'm hearing people like Nate Langston even admit like, yeah, Bluetooth sound is actually pretty decent these days. So yes, it took 25 years to get there with Bluetooth. But
you got to start somewhere.
Exactly.
And it's moving a lot quicker.
I actually believe Matter is going to get there. It's just not there right now. And it's not going to get there by October either.
And if you want to invest in a thing, you want to be the standard. Standards mean long time. They mean Bluetooth levels of long time, like you're saying. So if we expect that out of this particular connectivity set of technologies, we're going to be in for the long haul. We'll be talking in another 15 years about how finally
And it's
Matter
people
is
like
awesome.
us that are going to be complaining the most because we have the old stuff, right? It's,
we were first adopters.
and my stuff
darn it.
doesn't work with Matter, and I don't want to
Yeah,
replace my
it sucks.
15-year-old LifeX Pulse.
I also
Darn it.
I have this not argument, but conversation with friends all the time where, because my whole house is, there are various timers, just all the, my lights go on when 30 minutes before sunset every day in a certain room, not in the whole house, and people are like, what, like, is it so hard to just turn a light on? I'm like, no, it's not.
No, it's not hard.
But it's so
isn't it nicer?
fun to do it a different way.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
It's just nicer to be like, oh, I didn't have to go turn it on, right? It just came on.
It knew what I wanted to do anyway.
And it's not like it was difficult to make it do that. So like,
No.
why are they mad?
Yeah.
I don't understand.
And like, yes, the TV remote is sitting right in front of me, but I can just be like, hey, turn the TV on.
Yeah.
And then it turns on.
And sometimes
why
the
not-
TV
why not
remote
both?
isn't right in front of you, and you can still tell the TV to turn it on.
Exactly. Yeah. All right, Tom. Netflix has a new redesign. Everybody's talking about it. So what's the big deal?
I don't know what the big deal is. I noticed like the New York Times had this on its homepage today, like right up there with the conclave trying to pick the Pope. CNN was covering it. BBC was covering it. There is the biggest change to the Netflix television interface in 12 years. They've modified it slowly over the past 12 years, and they made a point of saying it's not the first time we've modified it in 12 years, but it's a big one. I jokingly note that, like all new designs, the nav moved. So it was on the left side. Now it's moved to the top. Next time they have a big interface design, I imagine they'll move it from the top back to the left side. That always happens. But now the top nav is up there on the top, not on the left side. You still get those rows of suggested shows, but there's a bigger image for the first show in any row. And that includes some more details, like whether it won an Emmy Award or whether it's number one on Netflix's charts that week. Netflix also said the algorithms choosing things for those rows will be more responsive in real time. So the way they put it was more responsive to your moods and interests in the moment, which I think is a little disconcerting. But essentially what they're saying is, if it's daytime, we might recommend different stuff to watch than at night. And we know what you're doing. So if you double thumbs up Squid Game, then we might start recommending other things that are similar to Squid Game. If you're like, oh, we know you really like that, you might also like this immediately. They all already do kind of stuff like that, but they're moving it a little more. They've also got a TikTok-like feed coming to the mobile app, and they also are going to expand the use of OpenAI in search for some iOS users. But the big deal is the interface change. And I guess the reason everybody's so excited about it is because Netflix is the most popular television that everyone watches. Even people who don't stream a lot of other things probably stream Netflix.
Yeah, one of the things that inroads have been made by other streaming services are more robust categorization of genres, television types, movie types, this sort of stuff. I hope that includes a bump there because I think Netflix has been woefully terrible at that. You can find things, you can dig down, and there's those Netflix codes that if you know them, you can do searches with these code numbers and stuff. But that's all janky and kind of weird. So I really hope that that's part of this. The other thing I think they're aiming for is clearly they're pushing their new games service.
Oh, yeah.
And they're pushing it toward TVs more than ever. And as a result, this new app gives them a few things. It gives them a better pipeline or potentially better programmatic way of getting games on the screen, but also kind of a unification across, your Rokus and your Apple TVs and everything else, so those games are consistent across those devices. I think this is going to be one of those moments of, oh, okay, here we go with their game plan, and we're going to see it in its this is going to be the most fruition we've seen.
I don't use Netflix content. I get through other means, but I don't actually go through Netflix's native app all that regularly. But I was thinking about the TikTok feed. I'm like, oh gosh, here we go again. Everybody's doing the TikTok type feed, but I think one of the things that people say about Netflix is like, if you're paying the $9.99 per month or whatever you're paying, it just, there's just so much stuff there. And it's stuff that you might be looking for specifically, or also just being like, laid back. I don't know. I just want to watch something that, speaks to my interests. So that might be a good idea, because what Netflix does have is a very, very large library.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I have always been impressed with the way Netflix has developed their UI. Now, I know it's unfair to compare it to something like Crackle or even Tubi, but like those interfaces work, but they work at a very like functional level. Like, yeah, I can search for things, but it's not as refined. It's not as polished. Netflix actually makes it very easy to navigate and find specific things that you're looking for. For example, say you want to find a show that features robots. You type robot, and then it will list all the things that have robots in them, whether it's an anime or Lost in Space or something along that nature, and you can refine it down. And I've always found that one of the key aspects outside of just having a big catalog and their own programming that Netflix does very well is having a way to navigate that catalog in a way that isn't instantly frustrating.
Yeah, they are good at that. I mean, early on they were kind of the only game in town, but it was Netflix, I think, that blazed most of the trails of hover over a thumbnail, it moves and maybe plays a trailer for you. There's more info and a place to just hit a plus to add it to your queue. Very, we're talking desktop action here, but really intuitive stuff like that seemed to happen on Netflix first. I think we've come far enough down that road, though, that we're starting to see the Disney Pluses, Hulus, and Paramount Pluses of the world start to make inroads in that regard. And as I mentioned earlier, they're a little better at the deep dives, the weird stuff, the stuff you're just like, I've seen all the modern things. Where's this weird old thing from the 70s? Netflix has never been great at surfacing some of that stuff. So, better meta searches, like Roger's describing, that's always good. AI-assisted searches actually seems like a great use case here.
Did you use natural language to talk about stuff?
Yeah.
And learning whether or not you do select on something that it's recommended to you. Like there's a bunch of things that get recommended and I will skip over them. Over time, it learns like, all right, maybe they're not into like, a reality show about building or selling your stuff from a storage locker. I'll give you something else. And then it just whittles down a selection that's more tailored to you, which is great because one of the things that, Netflix does very well is I'm bored. I want to watch something. Don't know what to watch. Give me something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Nick with a C says, actually, I found the Netflix TV UI to be terrible for finding things you don't know to search for. I don't think Netflix is alone. I mainly search for stuff either on YouTube TV or Plex, where I have access to a couple different servers. And YouTube TV is okay, but it also is just sort of like, you want to watch the Warriors game, right? And I'm like, yes.
It's all algorithm.
But when it comes to Plex and I'm looking for some sort of, I don't know, let's call it like like an international movie from 10 years ago. It's like, the voice search is abysmal, doesn't work. I have to type it in. And even then I'm, trying to figure it, like it could be a lot better.
I will say, I know what Nick is talking about. If you just want to watch something, the best interface or the best UI I've ever found for that is just not YouTube TV, just straight up YouTube. Because it surfaces stuff that, like, do I really want to watch it? And I click on it and I sit there for like the next hour watching some guy make like, Chinese food in a stall in Mumbai. Like, it's bizarre because it knows whether or not I actually have ever looked at something like that. But based on what you watch, this might be something you'd be into.
Did you enjoy the video of somebody making street food in Mumbai?
I never realized how quickly you could cook some of this food up, and I still trying to figure out what are the 4 bottles that they use.
It knew
they just squirt things in, and it's like, what is that? It's like that soy sauce, or is that just like some sort of
I think that's
like
what
flavor?
Netflix is up to here. Netflix is trying to compete with that and saying like, yeah, our search is not as good as it could be. It's not as good as YouTube. We need OpenAI boost here. We need to take into account what you did minutes ago to update those rows. So I think that's what's behind a lot of these tweaks here.
Yeah.
What I hope is it rolls out soon. I went to try to install it today because I thought it was today.
Yeah, no,
don't know why
over
I
the
thought
next
that.
few weeks and months.
Yeah, so my guess is you'll sort of just see it pop if you are one who
and
are
the AI
selected.
search, because I know there's people who don't like the AI. The AI search is something you have to opt in. They'll ask you, would you like to do this? And if you say no, then you will get the current search. You won't get the improved search.
Sure. Well, there you go. I do think they need better categories. I will die on this hill. I know I keep bringing it up. I'll say it one more time. They need better categorization of their content.
That's what they're saying. We're going to have better categories on the fly.
They're trying.
So,
That's the idea.
And going back to what Roger was saying with the games and live stuff, they have different types of things. They're doing more and more live, so they have to have a more flexible way of putting that in front of you.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, folks, we want to hear what you think of the show. If you have a few minutes, please fill out our annual DTNS survey. Let us know what about the DTNS family of shows is working for you, even what isn't. It's fun to do, and it really helps us shape the show. So please go do it. dailytechnewsshow.com/survey.
All right, Scott. Rumors have been flying around for months, if not years, about a possible handheld Xbox game console. Now there seems to be some pretty strong evidence. Let's talk about it.
All right. So for the longest time, the rumor has been that A, they've been working on something, and B, they were working with some partner. And the rumors were that Asus was the partner. And the reason for that is they're already, busily competing in this space now with Steam Decks and arguably with things like the Switch, if you're looking for a portable device. But in particular, if you're a PC gamer and you're looking to take all your Steam library, Microsoft library, and so on the go, the big go-to for competition to the Steam Deck has been the Asus's ROG Ally 2. For those not in the know, ROG stands for Republic of Gamers. It's kind of like their little brand. They use it for a lot of their products. Anyway, that thing's done really well. It's been nice. Most of them, or I guess the entire first run of the ROG Ally 1 was shipped with Windows as the native operating system. A little clunky in my opinion. I'll get to that in a minute. But there are now two versions of this that have shown up in a filing. So these are regulatory filings. This is not like a leak. This is like an actual public filing. Somebody's just got their eye out for it.
The FCC.
Right.
So, these were submitted to the FCC and then we're seen.
Yeah, and we have access to those. For some reason, they're the most smudged up screens ever, but I guess nobody cares when they're submitting things for technical reasons. But anyway, here's the twist. There are two of these. And the one version is looks like a ROG Ally follow-up for the ROG Ally 2. And the other one has an Xbox button on the thing. And that surprised a bunch of people. But
you have to look really hard to see it, too.
Yeah, it's a little tricky to see it. But this appears, anyway, to be the device that perhaps everybody's been talking about. Certainly the partnership people have been talking about. We don't know a lot more beyond what we already knew the specs were for the ROG Ally 2. We don't have to really get into those. But we knew stuff was coming. Here's what I expect, though. If they launch this with Microsoft marketing and branding, this will mean a device that is very integrated with Game Pass. Whether that means I'm going to guess it's going to be the two very important parts of this. It's going to be very xCloud ready, so you can stream all that stuff on the go, whether or not it's installed, but also the option to install your games via Game Pass. And there will be some sort of native Game Pass app that you would launch a lot like a Steam library or like the current Xbox PC library. That'll come up in some sort of friendly interface, and you will have as good access as you've ever had to your Game Pass library via that interface. Whether or not this will be just basic vanilla Windows underneath that, and you're going to be navigating that around, I don't know. I kind of hope not. The idea of a custom OS is exciting because, we'd like to have a little more perfect for the device kind of situation and not a crunched down desktop piece of software, which is really what's happening now. Something more akin to what SteamOS is. Sure, there's a desktop mode, but for all intents and purposes, you launch your Steam Deck, you run in game mode, and that's the interface. I think people want that, and they want it so much, in fact, that ROG Allies 2 will ship with the option of having SteamOS instead of Windows on them. And Valve's involved in making that happen, so it's not even a competitive problem. They're nice bumps all around on the specs. You might see a Steam Deck 2 announced this year to compete or to sort of remind people that they're here and they have had a good run so far. And wouldn't you like to keep running with a second edition of that device? So I wouldn't be surprised this hurries that up a little bit, at least the announcement of it, if not the ship date. I have all kinds of questions around AI. Are the sticks going to be Hall effect sticks? That's a big thing right now. For those unaware, essentially what it comes down to is these sticks snap back to a center position and do not develop drift the way that analog sticks have in the past. You've probably heard about all the drift problems they have with the first Switch. Switch 2 doesn't even use Hall effect, which I think is crazy, but we'll see how that goes. This is a really cool technology that essentially to the player doesn't mean anything other than really good control, but underneath you're never going to have a drift problem again and have to replace those sticks. We don't know any of that stuff yet. Battery life is a big deal on all of these devices. Steam Deck, the ROGs, the Lenovo's, they all are aiming for way better battery life in their next generations of these. I would expect that to be true here as well. I think specs-wise, they're going to go a little lower on this Microsoft one for a couple of reasons. It will be so Game Pass-centric that they want to make sure that it does that first and does that best. And they're going to want it to be lower priced for a consumer-grade cell. I don't think they want to overprice that thing. But the ROG Ally 2, in its purest ROG Ally form, I think will be more expensive, but also have higher specs. So I think that's what the spec disparity is there.
We were having a conversation yesterday about having physical buttons that do a thing rather than going through some sort of software phone tree of sorts to get that thing. And as you're talking about this, Scott, I ran and got my LG remote, which is relatively, this is just over a year old. And I have physical buttons for Netflix, Prime Video, Disney Plus, LG channels, don't know what those are, Sling, and Amazon's Assistant, along with, just variety of things that I can just do, through the home screen. And I use none of them ever.
Yeah.
Do you think the Xbox button is very meaningful?
Well, it is in the sense that even the Steam Deck has a button that sort of does this, which is bring the interface forward. So the Xbox button is designed for a lot of things in an Xbox environment, which is, you're playing and you're like, ooh, I want to capture that clip of the thing I just did. You hit the Xbox button and then you get a bunch of options. It's also a great place to pull up and check your messages. Somebody's pinging you to join their group. You accept it via that. So it's kind of a does everything button outside of the game that gets you to all the other things you might want to get to. Your interface, checking other games. Oh, that one's almost installed. Let me just check. Oh, cool, it's at 98%. Okay, back to my game. There's a lot of that going on with almost every console / even PC controlled with a controller type device. Steam is no different. You bring the Steam interface forward with those buttons on there. In this case, I would expect that button will bring forward all the Xbox stuff that you would get by having Game Pass. That being said, the one thing that does appear to be missing are thumb pads on the top, which the Steam Deck has for mouse-like navigation. That's not so much for the OS. It can be, but that's not really what it's designed for. Those pads are designed for games that are better suited for mouse-like control. And it's very nice in a pinch to go, well, this card game requires my thumb to be moving around like a thumb pad. And that works really well. I don't see that on these. And unless they have some secrety way of doing it either underneath, which is often other buttons, or if on top there is some sort of sensory thing happening, I don't know. So that's a little weird to me that's not included.
Although the Xbox controller doesn't have them either, right?
That's a really good point. It does
so
not.
That lends,
so
it
as
lends
an
yourself to the idea
device,
that this is much more Xbox-centric. I didn't even
That's a
thought
very, very good point. Microsoft really, they've got PC games on Game Pass. I don't think they intend so much for those games to be played here. I think what they want is the larger library of controller-based games on the go, and they get to partner in such a way that they don't have to eat all of the risk on, coming up with hardware solutions the way Nintendo might or somebody else.
It's a weird place for that Xbox button to be, though.
It's a very weird place.
You can't have it in the middle like you do on the controller, obviously, because you got the screen.
But it does make sense because you just thumb over, press it.
It's there. It usually is a brighter, rounder, lit up thing. Usually on devices like I have this controller over here. Let's give you a good example for those at home. I'm holding up a controller with an Xbox logo on it. When you see it, it's like nicely lit.
It's right in the
center, like Tom says, easy to get to. So some of those navigation questions are obviously going to have to be, addressed. But as far as like specs and potential goes, I think they've got a potential big deal going with this. I think this is going to be potentially massive. I will put myself down as a very interested party, and it's mostly on the back of Game Pass as an incredible value, perhaps the best in gaming, and this device will and should also play everything in your Steam library, all your Epic games, any of your Windows-based stuff. There are questions to be answered about OS and all that, but I think this is a really good stab for them to be doing this now. Especially at a time, by the way, especially at a time where they are spreading all their tendrils out as far as they can. They're like, we're selling our stuff on Steam. We have our stuff on Xbox. Right now, PlayStation's best-selling games of April were all three of the top 3 positions were Microsoft games.
Yeah.
That's kind of an insane thing to hear about,
Yeah,
but
we
that's what they're
mentioned that
doing
on the show yesterday.
They're pushing stuff out. They want it to be everywhere. And this burgeoning handheld market where, OLED screens and giant hard drives and enough power to run modern, AAA games at really good frame rates. This is all coming together to be kind of a perfect storm for them. It's now just marketing for Microsoft. How are they going to market this thing? I don't know.
It's interesting. Like if you told me 10 years ago that, they're going to start, what's going to be most popular is a handheld version of what essentially is a gaming PC as the growth market, because that's what everyone's drawn to, because typically with mobile games, you've always had to sacrifice something, right? Whether it's CPU power, graphical fidelity, and all that. With this, it's like, you get all of it in one. It makes a lot of sense. What I'm curious to know, does it make financial sense currently, as Nintendo is literally printing money with every Switch they sell, and Sony PlayStation is still on top when it comes to game consoles. When do you think we can definitively say, this is financially making the kind of inroads that Microsoft has always wanted to make?
Well, I think that it will be, again, it's a multi-pronged approach. I don't think they're waiting for one thing to be the end-all, be-all. I think that day has passed. That day was when the 360 had momentum and they looked like they could maybe command the console market from then on, and then they made a bunch of mistakes, and they've never really come back from that. But they have a profitable enterprise with what they do even now, and to get it to the next level, they just need their stuff everywhere. That's the bank they've put their pennies in. And it means Xbox anywhere. It really does mean that. When they say that, they mean it. So I don't even think it depends on this. This is just one avenue. It's a lucrative one potentially and cool, but they need Steam to perform well. They need Battle.net to continue to sell copies of games that aren't even Blizzard games. They need all the ecosystems, including Nintendo. And it looks like that's how they'll do it. They'll be everywhere and all places at once, and you'll have a hard time denying them, is their idea. We'll see if they can do it.
Am I the only one who still has a penny jar?
Yes.
Okay.
I have a quarter jar. And it's inflation, Sarah. Inflation,
No,
I can't I got to do quarters now. Can't do those pennies. Tom's always got something right behind.
He's always got something backstage.
Yeah.
Anyway, speaking of penny jars, we all like to save our cash for things that we like, and we're all influenced in some way in our buying decisions going forward. But a new study suggests that the gender representation of a robot could also influence our purchasing decisions. Roger, what's going on with that?
So there was a study done out of Penn State, actually 2 studies that was published in the Journal of Hospitality and Tourism Management. And what they were looking for was to see if cultural concepts of gender could influence whether or not someone would buy something. The idea was basically is if you had a service robot and you gave it a perceptibly male or female personality, would that influence the way people would buy things? And what they initially found was, over a study of 239 people, was that participants who dealt with a robot that was, from the outward perception, considered masculine, would tend to go with that robot's recommendation off a fictional menu more so than the one that was perceived to be female. Now, this wasn't across the board. It was a very specific group. It was, and the researchers found, quote, we found women with a low sense of power or felt they had they self-described a low sense of power were more prone to accepting the recommendation from a male robot's recommendations versus men with a low sense of power but didn't really alter what they wanted to pick off the menu. And the follow-up study was, how do we mitigate that sort of gender bias in the robots. And what they found was that if you make something very cute, whether it's considered to be female or male, everyone across the board was a lot more receptive. And so they created these, they use these robots from Bear Servo. They have a line of robots, and they're very innocuous. They basically look like little rolling trays. And they put an iPad tablet on top, and they gave it a very kind of anime looking face. And they use different different faces with it, but all the same hardware. And across the board, whether or not it was perceived to be male or female, people responded pretty well to it. And I've always wondered, I mean, are these things that are very important to everyone, or is this just something that maybe appeals to a select, not just like group of people, but select situations? For example, for the longest time, you would take advice about something to do with homewares from a particular person versus, it's doing something with automotive or something that's considered to be a lot more industrial.
I mean, I think we're all pretty particular. Even if we say that we're not, we are. You are influenced by something that feels like it is smarter than you are, right? So if you say, I don't know, I had like a crappy a male high school teacher in high school, like maybe you would gravitate towards, the female version of the robot more, that's just one of many, many examples. If you walk into a Lowe's and somebody working there walks up to you and says, hey, you need some help? Do you feel some type of way if it's a male or a female? I mean, maybe you do subconsciously, maybe you don't, but some people do. So I think a lot of this is, it truly is, when we talk about bias, this is a very good example of what bias is. And it's not because you don't like a certain gender. It's just that you feel comfortable because this is the way that you've been brought up as a human.
Yeah,
now,
I think there's actually one step further into that. Is that I hate to bring games into everything, but one thing gamers have gotten a lot lately is customization. It's the thing we've demanded. We want customization when it comes to how we look, how our characters dress, what gender or body type we choose, how their hair looks, how much facial hair. All these things are very tweakable down to very small increments these days. It didn't used to be that way. You kind of just had who you had. It's Sonic the Hedgehog and off you go. Not now. Like so much customization, especially when it comes to transmogging your character into something you really like or something that vibes with you. And that often includes voice changes. It includes what they sound like when they're fighting or what they sound like when they're just talking. And I think that some of those those cues are being picked up by all sorts of interface designers, but what I want them to do is just give us choices. We were in Las Vegas last week. Tom and I were in my car, and he said something to the effect that, oh, you're using the British guy for your Siri. And I went, yeah, and I don't know why. I just like how this guy sounds. Like it fits my vibe, whatever it is. And I don't think too much about it, but I love having the option. I love choosing what I want to hear and how I want to hear it.
Yeah, and back in the day when assistants, I'm not even talking about voice assistants, but like, Ask Jeeves, or, various assistants that a variety of kind of Silicon Valley companies were coming on board with. They tended to be like, it's your female assistant. And some people were like, yeah, that's fine. Great. Hope it works. Mm-hmm. And other people were like, I don't know. Doesn't really work for me. There is a gender thing going on there where it's like, is it always supposed to be Julie, my assistant, mm-hmm. Or can I make it my own, which is what you're talking about. That's
exactly what I mean. I just think the more options you give people, the more I think we answer the question, which is there is no what does everybody want and then one single answer. It's really complicated, and it's across the board, and there's so many people with different wants and the voices they want to hear on their assistants, as a small example. And that may change. In 6 months, I might go, I could go for like a Russian accent and you know what I mean? Like, give me the choices, and I think you're going to have a much happier user base.
I find it interesting that how receptive people were to just a cute persona, like very anime-esque, where it's both non-threatening, but you like, hey, like you should, like if like this very cutesy robot came out, regardless of what gender it was emulating, it would just be very cutesy and very outgoing. It's like, you should try our new taquitos. It's like, yeah, it might be good. I'll try the taquitos, right? Because it's offering these recommendations. And I'm wondering if maybe we've held on to our understanding of customer interaction, or way customers perceive things in a particular dated fashion. Maybe we should update those to something that works across the board. Because while it's cool to have a customizable robot all the time, if you're just dealing with a server at a restaurant, I don't know. I mean, actually, maybe, each time it sees you and they're like, okay, I need to turn into this persona for Scott, because Scott responds well to this, Darth Vader-esque a waiter who tells me, like, order the taquitos or else,
Yeah.
I mean, like, you know what I mean? Like,
Scott says, I want somebody to be kind of dominating to me.
I need
is
a voice
making my
order
meals.
anymore.
I need a voice that can convince me that it's ever okay to order taquitos, because they're always bad. But this is a whole different conversation for a different time.
Yeah, I'm with you, Scott. I don't
gross.
like taquitos.
They're gross. But customization, give us choice. Like, this is simple to me. If you've just got, here is a lady, here is a dude, here is maybe a slightly higher voice on one. Like, this isn't choice. This is just
and
bare minimum. Give me more than that. That's all.
I think the goal here, which companies are in the early stages of figuring out, is, who are you? What do you like? What grinds your gears? And we're going to make that, your personal assistant, or robot assistant in this case, be the one that you just are like, okay, I like you. I like I like how you told me to plan my day. I like how you made some recommendations of what I might buy at the store later, type stuff.
And of course, again, the study found it wasn't across the board. People who were very self-assured, who had, were very strenuous and knowing what they wanted, were less affected by any of these. Right? It's like, I don't like, it's Scott. It's like, no taquitos. I don't care if they're 50 cents for 100. I want this particular thing because that's what I want.
I want them even less if they're that cheap, by the way. It's horrible.
Well, no one's buying them because Scott doesn't like taquitos.
Well, and that's also sort of the beauty of this, right? Is I think with anything just that is software based, that is supposed to understand you. Like, I know you better than anyone else. It's like, no, you don't. And we all have those moments where we're like, doesn't work. Nope. I want what I want, and I am my own person.
Yep.
Well, speaking of own people, many of you may be robots, but we assume that most of you are humans that are writing into us. And with that in mind, let's check out the mailbag.
Turya, who may or may not be a robot, wrote in about our conversation discussing food delivery in hotels. Turya said, it reminded me how this is so seamless now at many hotels in China. You just open WeChat, find a restaurant you like, order, then the delivery person gives it to a robot to bring it to your room. It rings your doorbell, gives a cute sound, you pick up your food. It's quite freeing, not having to worry about it after you had a long flight and just want to grab some quick food and go to sleep. Do you think we'll get there in the US and Europe soon? And what's stopping us?
But what gender is the robot?
Yeah. I mean,
No, I'm
the
just
nicer
kidding.
the robot.
No, I think this sounds amazing. How many times have we all, you get off a long flight, you might have a wonderful trip ahead, but you've got that one night where it's like, I just need to just chill. I need to eat. I draw the shades and let's just call it. This sounds awesome, Terrier.
Yes, a side note, I did that once when I had to fly out to New York for work, and it was a long day, and I was really hungry, and there's nothing really handy, so I hit the Taco Bell next door to the hotel, and I got in the elevator, and one of the clients or patrons of the hotel berated me for selecting Taco Bell when I was in the middle of Manhattan. It's like, yeah. I didn't feel so good, but I ate my taquitos anyway, Scott.
That's right. You take no guff from them or anyone else, Roger. You eat your taquitos.
You don't. No, you eat what you want to eat, and
That's
don't
right,
let
brother.
them tell you any different.
Yep.
But if you have a robot, then more options. We also got an email from Brandon who wrote in about our discussion about LLMs for therapy. Brandon says, I'm currently seeing a therapist, but before I started with them, I had a project in Claude with some information about what I was dealing with. I augmented this with articles and transcripts from videos that resonated with me. Before I started with my human therapist, I had to create a summary of my observations to give them a jumping off point. Wasn't a cure-all, but it was a helpful tool to give structure to my thoughts and recognize patterns.
Yeah, I think this is a good example of how you can use the tools to your own advantage, and we all are masters of our own domain, right? And so you can choose to do it the way Brandon did. I think this is a really good example.
Yeah.
Derek at Edmonton, Alberta, go Oilers, chimed in about physical buttons versus touchscreens in cars. Derek wrote, where I live, the temperature regularly gets to negative 40 Celsius in the winter, and we still need to drive places. Snow day? What is that? Physical car controllers will let me still be able to make changes without taking off my usually thick gloves or mittens. There are thin gloves that allow touchscreen use, but I've had very mixed success with those, and it definitely doesn't work when your fingers are already cold.
That is a very good point, Derek. Very good point. Yes.
I have some work gloves that are thick, but they have material on the edge that works with a touchscreen.
Oh, nice.
And do they work well?
Yeah, they work.
I have some
pretty
like that
decently.
too. They feel like they're intermittent though. Like sometimes great.
They're
and then
not
sometimes
as
not.
100% reliable as my actual finger, but I'd say they're above 90%.
Get it? It's in a mitten.
Intermittent.
In a mitten.
Yuck it
I
up
see
while
Yeah,
you can.
see
I see what you
there.
did. That was good.
Yeah, it's good stuff. But yeah, thank you, Derek. It's good to remember when stuff like that might just affect somebody more. You know, if you're in a hurry, the car is cold, it's 40 below.
Yeah.
My goodness gracious.
That's Celsius. Oh,
And that's Celsius, right? Yeah. What is happening in Edmonton? But yeah, you got to wear gloves, and that's part of the deal. Remember, to anybody with anything that resonates with you that we've talked about on this show or past shows or future shows, you can send in your comments. We would love to hear them. Feedback at dailytechnewsshow.com. Also, thanks to you, Scott Johnson. You had a big week last week. How you feeling being back home?
Good. Everybody got con crud with me, so I feel like it's a sign that I need to just keep cranking. I got all kinds of cool stuff
bragging.
coming. Dude, it's Final Destination, and I'm telling you, it's not a good way that movie ends. So we'll see how I do. But in the short term, working my bum off, trying to get stuff done. And one of the cool things I get to do every week is a show on Thursdays called Core. It's all about video games. I've mentioned it here on the show many times. If you want to know more about what I think about that big Xbox button on a handheld, we have a lot to say. Check out the podcast at frogpants.com/core or wherever you get your shows.
We love getting your title suggestions during the show. You can submit them in Discord and Twitch, or just go to dtns.showbot.tv while the show is live. Our top vote getters are we have a lot of 2 votes today. Nick with a C, Yas Disney Queen, because it's on Yas Island.
That's funny.
Making Smart Homes Matter from Larry in Atlanta. Anytime we talk about matter, that has to be submitted by law. Making Homes Smart is a chore from GPEG84. The redesign heard round the world from Stealth Dave. He CPO from Petfig 2001. The Tom or James Bond voice, you choose from GPEG84. And Bleep Blop, I'm cute from Nick with a C.
That's cute.
Sarah, what did we
cute.
go with?
Well, we went with, despite all the cute offerings that we got today, we went with Xbox Goes Mobile from GPEG84.
Oh, good work, GPEG84. Big thanks to everybody who supports us on all the places. So if you're watching us on LinkedIn, you're watching us on YouTube, supporting us on Twitch. We always get some folks giving us bits like Zoe Brings Bacon or JT Bowers gave us a follow. Good to have you as a follow. And we got a raise on Patreon. Thank you, John, for raising your pledge. Really appreciate it when we do well enough to cause someone to say, you know what, I get a little more value out of the show. I want to give a little more value back. Thank you, John. Patreon.com/DTNS. That helps us make other shows, and we've got a good one coming from Andrea Jones-Roy. Data sets the shape the world we live in, and there's no better way to understand it than listening to Andrea. They talked to astrophysicist and folklorist Dr. Moya McTeer in episode 14 about extraterrestrial life and the surprising ways we get data about our universe. You can find more about that at behindthedatashow.com.
And you can watch us live Monday through Friday. We do it live every weekday, 4 p.m. Eastern, 2000 UTC. And you can find out more at dailytechnewsshow.com/live. We're back doing it all again tomorrow with Allison Sheridan talking about podcasting through the decades because she has been podcasting for 20 years. Boy, if anyone knows about pods, it's Allison. And we'll talk to you then.
The DTNS family of podcasts, helping each other understand.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.